welcome this evening. We'll give you the first couple of minutes to answer all the questions that we didn't ask in the questionnaire, and then we'll go with follow-up questions here.
Oh, no, I don't remember what you asked in the questionnaire. I might overlap a little bit.
Okay, well, hit a couple of high points.
Because I filled out another survey today. That was the mistake. I should have done that. Okay, so why I'm running for the board? Basically, overview of all that. Okay.
Well, whatever you feel is important.
All right, all right. Well, thank you so much for having us out. I know that some of you have heard me speak before, but I'm going to say it again because like any good teacher, you just keep reviewing and reviewing till people remember. So I am running for the State Board of Education again, and I will confess to you that I had kind of thought that the Lord might be moving me on. Thinking I might not run again until the governor came calling last summer more than once, asking me to serve as chair. And then when he got my senior pastor involved, I was like, okay, this is getting serious. And Senator Williams, kind of became a full court press. And the main reason is because my youngest son is a senior, and so I didn't want to take away from his senior year. But the governor invited him to come to a meeting with, to visit with them, and so we did, and he actually talked to Connor, and with Connor's approval and blessing, that's why I'm running again. We still have a lot to do on the board, and as chair, there's a lot more that I feel like I can do as far as setting the agendas. I was just looking through this environmental science book, sitting in the lobby, visiting with that sweet girl, and this is a book that is in the classrooms now, and it is talking about a famous researcher with environmental science who wrote a report, and he talks about that the argument that the roots of our environmental crisis are largely religious, and that Christianity is one of the reasons. It was Christianity's view of human dominance over nature was one of the most important influences on science because of kind of the arrogance of Christianity and their dominance over nature. So it's because of things like this in the textbooks that I feel like my time on the board is not over, and I feel like why God has led me to be on the board. And with the health curriculum standards coming, which determines what will go into the textbooks, and that will happen during my next term, that is huge, because the new big news is that there might be national sex standards. And if someone will ask me about that, I'll tell you a little bit about that. But we've got to protect our children from those national sex ed standards and from all of the other things that are trying to infiltrate that the liberal agenda is working on. So, is that it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, who has the first question for Ms. Cargill? Mr. Caballas.
Okay, it's been raised by somebody else in the race, I can't remember who, that all this decision making ought to be sent back to the local level and the parents. How realistic is that?
Well, it's totally unrealistic, and districts don't want that responsibility. Their teachers are so overstressed and so overburdened, and as long as there's a state test there, which accountability is here, I think, for a long time as far as what the legislature is saying, and so having the state board oversee the curriculum standards brings organization to the chaos, and helps the teachers know what is expected at each grade level, and so then they can focus on their lesson plans and getting the teaching done. And remember, the essential knowledge and skills, the curriculum standards are the bare, that's the minimum. Teachers can go way over and beyond that if their students need that. So it's just the minimum of what needs to be taught. So there's so much more that a teacher can do if they choose to do that with their kids.
Thank you.
So that's a good question.
Okay, Ms. DeSimone.
With this new sex ed coming, I've heard some school districts are not going to allow parents to opt their children out. Is that up to individual schools, and how do you feel about parents being able to opt their children out without their children being made to feel?
That's a good question too. I'd actually rather there be an opt-in because then that gives the parents even more say in what their children are going to be seeing and hearing. So, I certainly want the parents' involvement because there are some things that I do not want my child. I would not have wanted my child to learn from their teacher. I want, in the case of I have 3 boys, I wanted them to learn from their dad.
Right.
So I don't think that that is the school's responsibility. So I would, if I had my dream of dreams, it would be an opt-in, but since most schools choose the opt-out, then I guess that would be the next best thing.
And kind of a follow-up, is this health, what do you call it?
We will
Is it for
actually be revising the
kindergarten?
curriculum standards, which teachers use to develop their lesson plans, and publishers use those curriculum standards to develop the textbooks.
So is it gonna start at the kindergarten level?
K through 12.
I don't think so.
Yeah, K through 12. Now, you know, districts have a health advisory committee.
Uh-huh.
That's legislative, can have up to 21 members. And so I know on the Conroe Health Advisory Committee, we have people from the YMCA. I know one friend of mine is a speech pathologist who served on it. One owns a fitness center, so, you know, a nurse, probably a doctor too. So, you know, and it's up to them to determine the exact curriculum that will go along with the health textbooks.
Okay,
So-
Ms. Ferguson.
The Senate Bill 6, what did it strip from the State Board of Education in the way of authority?
Yeah, and it's just, y'all are so informed, this is awesome, I love that. It's just one little bitty line that at face value looked very, very innocent until you see the repercussions of it. And so what the bill states, and I have my little thing right here, and I'll just read straight from my little sheet. Okay, the instructional material allotment, which I totally agree with. So now districts have an allotment from the permanent school fund on which they can spend the money for instructional materials. And it says that the allotment may be used for instructional materials from the SBO list, instructional materials from the commissioner list, which is the electronic materials, which is another authority I would like to get back to the board. We have a great commissioner right now, but I don't know who future commissioners are going to be, and they might not be as receptive to our input on electronic textbooks and such, because the commissioner does oversee those. And then next on the list that the allotment can be used for are instructional materials not on the SBOE list. So that could mean they could spend their money on things from Barnes and Noble. I guess if I really want to stretch it and stir the pot, they could spend their money on things from Planned Parenthood or CCAP or
C-scope.
yeah, well, that's true.
Or
I think they are
LG.
spending their money on C-scope
LGBT.
curriculum, yeah. And as a matter of fact, at the next board meeting, well, at every board meeting, I do ask the head of textbooks to give us what the money is being spent on. So in other words, they have to give us a report of what all the districts in Texas are spending their allotment money on it, and so that way we can monitor how many things are being bought that are not on our approved list. So far it's been okay, but I don't think districts really know that they have this authority yet. So
They will find out fast.
they will find out fast.
Well, my question was on that same line, but let me just add to it then. What can we do as concerned citizens? I see a nightmare in the making.
We need to get this changed, and I did communicate with Representative Eisler last week, and I printed his response. I said, we have got to either get that line stripped out of the bill, which is hard to do, or we need to make this self-certification process have some teeth in it. Because right now, this is what it says, that, let's see, for school districts who choose to use their instructional material allotment on instructional materials that are not approved by the State Board of Education, they have to, in other words, self-certify that those materials cover the curriculum standards. I have now seen the form that's being sent to districts. It's online, and the Texas Education Agency is sending the form to districts, and it's a matter of checking off boxes. And it, does it cover all of the curriculum standards, et cetera, so they can just check those off. And now what publishers are actually doing is they are providing TEKS correlation documents. So in other words, the publishers are going through their books and they're saying, yep, meets that curriculum standard, meets that one. District, here's how we meet it, use this for your self-certification.
And then what's in between each of those needs is what the problem is. We don't
Fox
have any
watching
idea.
Henhouse.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And there's no error checking now, and because that was a big thing that we did when we appointed the panels to look through the textbooks, was to check for errors. And to make sure that the content didn't have, like, you know, such a slant towards Islam, et cetera.
Well, like the one you read earlier.
Yeah, really.
Okay, another question, Ms. Ferguson?
Barbara, are you familiar with Howard Zinn?
Remind me of
He wrote,
what he wrote.
The People's History of the United States, I think it was.
I don't think I know him, but I'd love to. Tell me about him.
He was a communist.
Okay.
And his book was very popular as a textbook in college. And then we also have the problem of Bill Ayers being in the education business of teaching teachers and coming up with curriculums for elementary school. And I think one of them was called Queering Elementary.
Yeah.
So thank
Yeah,
God
that
that we
line of
have
reasoning
these.
does not surprise me. And that's a whole other issue that I have, is how our teacher education schools are not as adequate as we would like them to be. Of course, we have no authority over that, but we'd sure like to see our education programs strengthened in our state.
No, but you are the people that stand on the front lines that keep this sort of thing out of our schools.
Absolutely, yeah. We do.
I'm thinking, okay.
Just quick, I hope it's quick, but, I addressed Rob Eisler about this, you know, stripping the authority from the State Board of Education. He claims that it hasn't been stripped.
Well, I guess if you look 2 lines above, it does say that the instructional material allotment can be used for instructional materials from the State Board list. So theoretically, our adoption process is still in place. But who's going to use it? I've talked to publishers at our last meeting. We have another meeting in April, and they're all saying, what's the incentive for us to go through your rigorous adoption process when all we have to do is just sell our books outside of the process, because the money can still be spent on that. So yes, our process is still in place, but they're gonna bypass that process.
Because it's easier.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Road less traveled, it's easy to go down, so.
We have just a very brief time for a wrap-up. If you want to give us just a 30-second, 1 minute at most wrap-up.
Okay. Well, I think in looking at some of the other state board races, just, we would appreciate your prayers to get more conservatives on the board. If we could get 7 or even 8, because 8 is a majority out of the 15. For 4 years, we had 7, and that was so incredible, because you know, it was right when the science standards were being adopted and then the history standards, so God's timing was perfect, and then we just had to fight for that one vote to be a majority. And so I'm really praying that we have some turnaround on the board, because you know, now is the time that we've got to do something, and we've got to protect these precious children. I hate that we have to, almost in a way, fight against our own legislature, stripping authority from us, because with the National Common Core standards that 45 states have adopted, who are publishers going to write to? They're going to write for the National Common Core standards and for those 45 states. So that's already working against us. And now that in Texas, you can go outside of the adoption process, there were a lot of books that if you look on the side, and if you look at your kids' books, down the side, it might say Texas edition. And that meant it was written for Texas, because we're such a big market for our curriculum standards, which are very, very rigorous compared to Common Core, and we're not going to see that now. So our kids will have to use the books that are based on Common Core. So,
Okay.
a lot to do.
Well, I had several questions I was hoping to get in, but everybody else got in first.
Will you
so-
walk me out, Nancy? Thank y'all so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Y'all
you.
take care. You can email me your questions. They come